Welcome to our channel. Simply gluten-free. This video explains what gluten is, with special tips for the Hispanic community in the Americas. Warning: this video is not professional medical advice. Always seek the guidance of a qualified healthcare professional. Never ignore the advice of a medical professional. Gluten is a plant-based protein found in some grains and not others. Remember that proteins are macronutrients necessary for our daily nutrition. Grains are edible seeds that humans use to make flour and other foods. Grains that contain gluten include wheat, barley, and rye. Wheat is one of the most common grains used as food. Wheat is used to make bread, tortillas, cookies, pasta, cakes, and sweets. Wheat is also used to season meats, vegetables, and soups. When you eat foods made with wheat, you are eating gluten. Barley, while not as well known as wheat, is used to make bread, soups, and porridge. It's also the main ingredient in beverages like beer, Malta, some flavored waters, malted drinks, and coffee substitutes. When you eat or drink foods made with barley, you are consuming gluten. Rye is a grain not widely known in the Americas, but it's used extensively in Europe for making bread and crackers. When you eat foods made with rye, you are eating gluten. Grains that are naturally gluten-free include corn, rice, oats, sorghum, amaranth, millet, buckwheat, and teff. But note, we say that some grains contain gluten and that others are naturally gluten-free. This is because sometimes, during processing for consumption, a naturally gluten-free grain can be contaminated with another grain that does contain gluten. For example, it's very common for oats to be grown on the same farm as wheat or rye, with some wheat grains getting mixed in with the oat grains and vice versa. In another example, it's very common in North America for corn to be ground into coarse flour called grits in the same mill where wheat flour is ground. That's why it's important to check the packaging label when you need gluten-free grains. If it doesn't say gluten-free, sin gluten, or libre de gluten, it may contain gluten. For more information on choosing gluten-free foods, watch our video, Gluten-Free Foods, which we hope to have available very soon on this channel. Subscribe to our Simply Gluten-Free channel by clicking the black button to be among the first to see future videos. When we eat gluten-containing grains, the gluten reaches our intestines and is digested by enzymes that break it down into smaller pieces to be absorbed and used as nutrients. Our bodies can then use these smaller pieces as essential nutrients. This is a normal process that occurs with all the proteins we eat, not just gluten. But there's a problem. In some people, when gluten reaches the intestines, it triggers a strong immune response. Normally, immune cells only attack invaders such as disease-causing bacteria. But in some people, immune cells are activated by gluten. Unfortunately, when these cells are activated by gluten, there's actually nothing to attack but the intestines themselves. This causes inflammation, and depending on how sensitive the person is, it can cause bloating, gas, abdominal pain, headaches, diarrhea, and vomiting. The immune cell attack also impairs the intestine's ability to absorb food and nutrients. Over time, it can cause other health problems such as malnutrition, osteoporosis, and skin and nerve disorders, among others. This condition is known as celiac disease. It is believed that approximately 1 to 2% of the world's population has celiac disease. In addition, it is estimated that between 1% and 10% of the world's population are gluten sensitive and have digestive problems due to gluten, similar to but less severe than celiac disease. Currently, there is no medication or medical intervention to cure celiac disease or gluten sensitivity. The only effective treatment is to follow a gluten-free diet. Unfortunately, it's difficult to avoid gluten in food as gluten-containing grains, especially wheat, are very popular around the world. Their popularity is due precisely to the gluten they contain. This is because gluten is an elastic protein. This elasticity is what gives bread its spongy texture. This is achieved through the combined action of the gluten in the flour and the yeast or baking soda added to the dough. The yeast and baking soda release gas bubbles that are trapped by the gluten. At the same time, the bubbles expand the dough and create many small spaces within the bread, giving it the desired spongy texture. On the other hand, gluten-free grain flours such as corn and teff are commonly used to make tortillas. Other gluten-free grains such as rice and oats are more commonly cooked whole. It is difficult, though not impossible, to make bread with gluten-free grain flours. When yeast or baking soda is added to gluten-free flour dough, the gas bubbles don't stay in the dough because there's nothing to trap them. To make gluten-free bread, special additives are needed that mimic the elasticity of gluten and trap some of the bubbles. We hope to have videos on how to make gluten-free bread and other foods very soon. If you're interested, please subscribe to our channel. It's important to understand what gluten is and which foods contain it. When cooking at home, a person with gluten sensitivity must ensure that all the ingredients they use are gluten-free and that the cooking utensils, surfaces, and even the air around them don't contain gluten flour that could contaminate their food. Gluten sensitivity doesn't only affect the person who is sensitive, but also others. For example, in a restaurant, a person with gluten sensitivity will ask about the ingredients and preparation of the dishes to make sure they order gluten-free food. If the waiter or chef knows nothing about gluten or does not have gluten-free dishes, the gluten-sensitive person cannot eat at that restaurant and the restaurant loses that person and their companions as customers. In summary, gluten is a protein found in 3 grains used in food production: wheat, barley, and rye. Foods prepared with wheat, barley, or rye contain gluten. Grains that are naturally gluten-free include corn, rice, oats, sorghum, amaranth, millet, buckwheat, and teff. These grains can be contaminated with gluten, so it is important to check the packaging label. When gluten reaches our intestines, it is digested by enzymes that break it down into smaller pieces to be used as nutrients. In some sensitive individuals, gluten in the intestines activates immune cells that attack the intestines themselves, causing inflammation, bloating, gas, abdominal pain, headaches, diarrhea, and vomiting. Over time, damage to the intestines can lead to malnutrition, osteoporosis, skin and nerve diseases, among other problems. There is no medicine or medical intervention that cures gluten sensitivity. The only effective treatment is a gluten-free diet. It's difficult to avoid gluten in food as gluten-containing grains are very popular because gluten is an elastic protein that gives bread its spongy texture. It's difficult to make bread using gluten-free flours. Gluten sensitivity not only affects the sensitive individual but also their family, friends, and community. Therefore, we all need to be educated about gluten. If you would like more detailed information on how to follow a gluten-free diet, subscribe to our channel to receive our future recipe videos and gluten-free shopping tips at the top of your YouTube feed. Thank you for supporting our channel. We wish you good health.